The morning air buzzed with the usual chatter of hundreds of students crossing the university courtyard. Then, everything stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Footsteps slowed. Even the birds seemed to disappear into the silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward the same unbelievable sight. Hana Takahashi, the woman the entire university called the campus ice queen, the student council president whose expression never changed, the girl who had rejected every confession, ignored every rumor, and walked through campus as though emotions were beneath her. She was running, not walking with her usual graceful composure. Running. Her long black hair, always perfectly arranged, had come loose behind her. Her breathing was uneven. Her eyes searched desperately through the crowd until they found only one person. Kaito. The name echoed across the courtyard. Students stared at one another in stunned disbelief. Did she just call his name? The Ice Queen yelled. No, that's impossible. Kaito turned at the sound of his name. Before he could say a word, Ayaka rushed straight to him. She grabbed his wrist with both hands, hard enough that he couldn't pull away, even if he wanted to. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Hundreds of students watched in complete silence. Then Ayaka looked up at him. The proud girl who had never bowed her head to anyone now stood there with trembling lips and tear-filled eyes. Her voice cracked. You're not walking away from me again. A wave of shocked whispers swept through the crowd. No way. Is she crying? I've never even seen her smile. Kaito glanced around at the sea of stunned faces before looking back at horror. His expression softened quietly, so only she could hear. He said, Hana, I think everyone's watching. For a brief moment, she closed her eyes. Then, instead of letting go, her grip tightened. I don't care anymore. The entire courtyard fell silent once again. No one understood what they were witnessing. How had the untouchable campus ice queen become so afraid of losing one ordinary student? The answer began 3 months earlier. The first morning bell echoed across Serene University as thousands of students poured through the campus gates, filling the walkways with laughter, conversations, and the familiar rush of another ordinary weekday. Near the administration building, tucked away between the security office and student affairs, a small room quietly welcomed its first visitors of the day. A simple wooden sign hung above the door, lost and found. Inside, shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Umbrellas lined one wall. Student IDs filled labeled trays. Water bottles, headphones, notebooks, calculators, wallets, scarves. Every forgotten belonging waited patiently for someone to come back. Behind the counter, Ran Sato carefully finished writing in an inventory notebook before placing another recovered item onto the correct shelf. The bell above the door jingled. Without looking up, Kaito smiled. Morning, Sora. Wrong person. Kaito finally lifted his head. Standing there was a confused first-year student he had never met before. A brief silence passed. Then, Kaito scratched the back of his neck with an embarrassed smile. Sorry, I thought you were someone else. The freshman laughed. It happens. Neither of them thought anything of it. It was such a small mistake that it disappeared almost as quickly as it happened. The student stepped forward. I think I lost my notebook. What color? Dark blue. Kaito stood and slowly walked toward the shelves. Blue notebook. His fingers moved across several neatly arranged stacks before stopping. He picked one up. This one? The student shook his head. No. Kaito immediately returned it. He reached farther down. This one has tiny stars drawn in the corners of almost every page. The student's eyes widened. That's mine. Kaito handed it over. You doodle whenever you're thinking. The freshman stared. You remember that? You came here about 2 weeks ago. The student laughed in disbelief. I don't even remember coming here. Kaito smiled. I remember the notebook. Another student waiting nearby chuckled. I swear you remember every single lost item on campus. Ill try. I know. The student shook his head. Oh, it's creepy. Kaito laughed. Ill. Take that as a compliment. The room filled with light laughter. Professor Nakamura stepped out from the back office carrying a storage box. You've become popular. I think they're exaggerating. They think you remember everything. For just a second, Kaito's smile became quieter. Well, not everything. Professor Nakamura simply nodded. I know. Neither of them explained further. They didn't need to. Outside, campus life continued as usual. Students hurried between buildings. Friends laughed over breakfast. Club members recruited freshmen. Then, the atmosphere shifted. Almost imperceptibly, conversations became quieter. Students stepped aside. A group of council members straightened their posture. President. Good morning. The committee documents are ready. A sleek black sedan had just stopped outside the administration building. Hana Takahashi stepped out. Elegant, graceful, perfectly composed. Her long black hair rested neatly over her shoulders. A leather shoulder bag hung from one arm. A tiny silver bell attached to it chimed softly as she walked. Her expression never changed. She acknowledged greetings with a polite nod before accepting several folders from another council member. No wasted movement. No unnecessary words. Someone whispered after she passed. Oh, the Ice Queen. Another immediately answered. Keep your voice down. Within seconds, an open path had formed before her. No one wanted to be in her way. Meanwhile, Kaito stepped out of the lost and found office carrying a cardboard box filled with unclaimed notebooks. He wasn't watching the people ahead. Instead, he was quietly reading the labels. Engineering, economics, architecture. As he reached the doorway, one notebook slid free from the box. Before it touched the ground, another hand caught it. Kaito looked up. A young woman stood in front of him, holding the notebook. He noticed the leather shoulder bag, the small silver bell hanging from it, the stack of folders in her other arm. He smiled warmly. Nice catch. And you're welcome. He adjusted the heavy box. Would you mind putting that one back on the counter inside? For a brief second, Ayaka simply looked at him. Nobody, absolutely nobody, had ever asked the student council president to help carry books. Not because they were afraid, because they would never dare. And of course, she carried the notebook inside. Outside, every nearby student froze. Did he just ask President Kurosawa to help him? No way. Doesn't he know who she is? Inside the office, Ayaka placed the notebook neatly onto the counter. Kaito smiled. Thanks. He continued sorting books as naturally as if she'd been helping him every day. Were you looking for something? You know. Though he nodded. Then I guess you don't have much reason to visit Lost and Found. Another silence followed. Normally, people rushed to fill silence around Ayaka. Compliments, questions, requests, excuses to keep talking. Kaito simply continued organizing shelves comfortably, without expecting anything. His eyes stopped on an old umbrella. The fabric had faded. Its handle was cracked. The claim tag had yellowed with age. He gently placed it back onto the shelf. You know. Ayaka looked toward him. What? He smiled faintly. Most people think losing something is the sad part. He adjusted the umbrella so it stood perfectly upright. Oh, I think the saddest part is when nobody ever comes back looking for it. Ayaka remained silent. As she knew, he was talking about forgotten belongings. Yet somehow those words landed somewhere much deeper. For years, people had searched for the student council president, the top student, the future executive. But had anyone ever searched for Ayaka? Before realizing it, she quietly asked, Why do you think that? Kaito shrugged. I don't know. I just think everything deserves someone who misses it enough to come back. The room became quiet again. Not awkward. Peaceful. A kind of silence Ayaka hadn't experienced in years. Outside the open doorway, Mika Hayashi had just arrived. She stopped walking. Inside, the Ice Queen wasn't discussing budgets. She wasn't giving orders. She wasn't correcting anyone. She was simply talking to an ordinary student. Kaido glanced at the wall clock. Oh, I'm going to be late. He picked up his backpack, walked toward the door, stopped beside Ayaka. Thanks for helping. Without hesitation, he lightly patted her shoulder. The gesture was so casual, so ordinary, that Kaido never gave it another thought. See you around. He walked away. The tiny silver bell on Ayaka's bag chimed softly as she turned to watch him leave. Outside, the courtyard had become completely silent. Students stared through the office doorway. Council members stood frozen. One freshman whispered, "He touched her." Another answered, "Oh, he's dead." Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. Inside, Ayaka remained perfectly still. Slowly, almost unconsciously, her fingertips rose to the place where his hand had rested. It wasn't the touch. It was what the touch meant. For 5 minutes, she hadn't been the campus ice queen. She hadn't been the student council president. She had simply been another student. Another girl. Outside, Kaito disappeared into the crowd without ever looking back. Emi quietly entered the office. She looked at Ayaka, then toward the doorway. Finally, she asked, President, who was that?" Ayaka continued staring toward the place where had vanished. For several long seconds, she said nothing. Then, with a voice softer than Emi had ever heard before, "I don't know." A tiny pause. Her fingers still rested on her shoulder. But I'd like to. 3 days passed. For Ren Sato, they were peaceful. For Hana Takahashi, they were confusing. President. Today's agenda. Emi placed the schedule on Ayaka's desk. Faculty meeting at 9 o'clock. Budget review at 11 o'clock. Council meeting at 1 o'clock. Ayaka read it quietly. Then asked, "Do we have anything near the administration building?" Emi slowly looked up. "You know." A short silence. Then "I'll inspect the campus facilities." Emi raised an eyebrow. "You've never inspected the campus facilities." "I should." "On today?" Ayaka calmly stood. "On today." As the office door closed behind her, Nemi sighed. "You're terrible at lying." The administration building was unusually quiet. Ayaka slowed her pace as she approached the familiar wooden sign, "Lost and Found." The door was open. She stopped outside. Inside, an elderly janitor stood beside the counter, scratching his head. "I know I left it somewhere. My master key." Kaido smiled. "When did you use it last?" "The science building. You repaired room 204 yesterday." "When? Yeah. You also stopped by the greenhouse." The janitor blinked. "How do you know that?" "There are tiny leaves stuck to your boots." The old man looked down. "When, huh?" Kaido continued thinking. "You always hang your keys on your right side. Today they're missing. So you probably took them off while kneeling." The janitor's eyes widened. "The greenhouse water pipe." He hurried away. 5 minutes later, he returned laughing loudly. "You found them?" Kaido rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't." "Oh, you did." Outside, Ayaka quietly watched. He never showed off. He simply paid attention. As she turned to leave, someone bumped into her shoulder. "I'm sorry." A frightened freshman immediately bowed. Books scattered across the ground. Before Ayaka could react, Kaido was already kneeling. "It's all right." He picked up every notebook. One by one, he noticed one page sticking out. "You have tomorrow's chemistry quiz." The freshman's face turned pale. "I forgot. You've been carrying it folded in your notebook all morning." The boy laughed nervously. "I've been looking for that." Kaido handed it back. "Good luck." The freshman bowed repeatedly before running toward class. Mika watched the entire exchange. No cameras, no audience, no chance of praise. Yet Kaido helped as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Just then, another student walked into the office. "Morning, Kaido." Kaido looked up and smiled. "Morning." The student frowned. "Oh, we've literally never met." Silence. Kaido blinked once. then smiled awkwardly. I'm sorry. I thought you were someone else. The student laughed. No worries. He walked away. Mika remained standing by the doorway. That was the second time. She remembered the first morning. He had made the exact same mistake. Not once, twice. Yet somehow he never forgot a notebook, or a lost umbrella, or a student's habits. Her curiosity deepened. Later that afternoon, Mika walked through the library. She wasn't looking for a book. She was thinking. He remembers objects. He remembers habits. He remembers conversations. So, why does he sometimes fail to recognize people? Nothing made sense. The next day, rain covered the campus. Students rushed beneath umbrellas. Mika stood beneath the overhang outside the administration building. She noticed Kaido locking the lost and found office. He looked toward the sky, then quietly smiled. I forgot it again. No umbrella. Again. Instead of running, he simply started walking into the rain. Ayaka hesitated. For only a second. Then opened her umbrella. She walked beside him. Without saying a word. She tilted it so they both stood beneath it. Kaido looked sideways. The student council girl. You hello. Thanks. No problem. They continued walking. The sound of rain filled the silence. Unlike everyone else, Kaido never seemed uncomfortable around her. He never searched for impressive words. He never tried to flatter her. He simply enjoyed the quiet. Surprisingly, so did she. Halfway across campus, a little boy cried beside the fountain. His mother searched frantically. My airplane. My toy airplane. Students walked past. Most barely noticed. Kaido stopped immediately. He crouched beside the child. Where did you last fly it? The boy pointed upward. Near the fountain. Kaido looked at the wind. The leaves drifting across the pavement. Then toward a nearby flower bed. He walked over. Reached beneath a bush. Pulled out a small blue toy airplane. The boy's crying stopped instantly. My airplane. He hugged it tightly. His mother bowed over and over. Thank you. Kaido smiled. I'm glad we found it. As they walked away, Ayaka asked, how did you know? Kaido shrugged. The wind was blowing east. The airplane is light. And so, it wouldn't land where he dropped it. Hana stared at him. He looked at the world. Differently. Not better. Differently. They continued walking. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Hana asked the question that had been growing inside her all week. Why do you work at Lost and Found? Kaido smiled. I like returning things. Then why? He looked toward the little boy hugging his airplane. Did you see his face? She nodded. He looked relieved. So did his mother. He smiled softly. I get to see that almost every day. Hana quietly looked ahead. No awards. No applause. No recognition. Yet he genuinely believed that making one stranger smile was enough. For the first time, she wondered if she'd been measuring success the wrong way. They reached the crossroads where their paths separated. Kaido smiled. Well, this is me. He started to leave. Then suddenly stopped. Lo. He looked embarrassed. I forgot to ask. What department are you in? Hana blinked. She had expected him to ask her name, not her department. Business. Administration. Nice. I've heard the professors there are strict. She almost laughed. They are. He waved. See you around. Then disappeared into the rain. Hana remained standing beneath the umbrella, watching until he vanished. Only then did Emi's voice speak behind her. President. Ayaka turned. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. Emi smiled knowingly. You weren't inspecting campus facilities. Ayaka looked toward the empty path Kaido had taken. Very quietly. Almost to herself. She answered. You know. I was trying to understand someone. For the first time in years, Hana Takahashi wasn't trying to solve a problem. She was trying to understand a person. And somehow, that felt far more difficult. The following Monday, something unusual happened. Hana Takahashi didn't change her route. She didn't invent another inspection. She didn't make excuses. Instead, she simply walked to the lost and found office, not because she expected to find answers, but because she wanted to see him again. She stopped halfway. What am I doing? For the first time in years, the campus ice queen turned around, only to stop again. After a long moment, she quietly sighed, "I'm already here," and continued walking. Inside the office, Kaido was struggling with a mountain of donated books. Boxes covered almost every corner. Professor Nakamura laughed. "I told the library we'd sort them tomorrow. They sent everything today." Kaido looked at the stack. "Well, I noticed." Just then, Ayaka appeared at the doorway. Professor Nakamura smiled. "President Kurosawa." She bowed politely. "I heard the library donation drive was today." "Well, it is." She looked toward the boxes. "Would you like another pair of hands?" Kaito looked surprised. "The student council girl. You don't have council work." "Well, it can wait." Professor Nakamura looked between the two of them, then smiled knowingly. "I suddenly remembered. Well, I have paperwork." Neither of them believed him. Within seconds, he disappeared into the back office, leaving them alone. For several minutes, they worked in comfortable silence. Kaito read each title. Ayaka placed the books onto different shelves. History, literature, engineering, medicine. It was strangely peaceful. After a while, Ayaka noticed something. Kaito wasn't looking at the covers very often, but instead, his fingers gently brushed the spines, almost as if he already knew where each book belonged. "You've organized these before. A few thousand times." "A few thousand?" He laughed. "Probably." She smiled. "That's a strange hobby." "I never said it was a hobby." "What is it then?" He thought for a second. "A place where forgotten things wait." Those words stayed with her. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed outside. Several books fell from a nearby cart. A frightened freshman stood frozen. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." Before anyone else reacted, Kaito walked over. "It's all right." Together, he and Ayaka began picking up the scattered books. The freshman looked close to tears. "I ruined everything." "Oh, you didn't." Kaito smiled. "Books are surprisingly forgiving." The freshman laughed through watery eyes. "Oh, really? Most of mine have survived coffee." Ayako couldn't help smiling. Within seconds, the nervous student relaxed completely. As the freshman hurried away, Ayako quietly asked, "How do you always know what to say?" Kaito looked genuinely confused. "I don't." "Oh, you do." "Oh, I just imagine. What ID wants someone to say to me?" Ayako stopped walking. That answer was somehow even kinder than she'd expected. An hour later, the last box was finally empty. Kaito stretched. "We actually finished. We make a good team." The words escaped Ayako before she realized it. Silent, she looked away. "Oh, I mean, we worked efficiently." Kaito smiled. "I knew what you meant." For some reason, that embarrassed her even more. As they left the building, a young girl no older than 8 stood crying near the entrance. Her father looked frantic. "I only looked away for a second. My mother." The girl sobbed. "I can't find grandma." Without hesitation, Kaito crouched beside her. "Hey." The little girl wiped her tears. "What color is grandma's jacket?" "Green." "Does she walk fast?" "No." "Does she use a cane?" "Yes." Kaito nodded, then looked toward the festival lawn. "She won't have gone far." He turned to Ayako. "Could you check the benches near the flower garden?" She didn't question him. She simply ran. 5 minutes later, Ayaka found an elderly woman sitting beneath a tree. A green jacket, walking cane, looking around in confusion. "Grandma." The little girl threw her arms around her. The old woman smiled with relief. "There you are." The father bowed repeatedly. "I don't know how to thank you." Kaito smiled. "You already did." The family walked away together. Ayaka looked back at him. "How did you know she'd be there?" He shrugged. "If she uses a cane, she'd look for somewhere to sit." "You guessed?" I listened. You heard the cane tapping on the pavement earlier. Ayaka stared. He had noticed something she hadn't even heard. They began walking back across campus. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the stone path. Students laughed nearby. Someone practiced the violin from the music building. Everything felt peaceful. Then, without warning, Kaido waved cheerfully. Professor Ito, an elderly man walking toward them, looked confused. Professor Suzuki. Silence. Kaido blinked. Sorry. I thought you were Professor Tanaka. Professor Suzuki laughed. It happens. He continued walking. Ayaka looked at Kaido. You seem to mistake people quite often. Kaido gave a small smile. More than I'd like. He didn't explain further. She didn't ask. But the question grew louder inside her mind. As they reached the student council building, Emi hurried toward them. President. The committee has been waiting. Ayaka looked toward the entrance, then back at Kaido. He was carrying the last box of donated books by himself. Without thinking, she turned back to Emi. Tell them they'll be 5 minutes late. Emi blinked. President. I'll be there shortly. She took the box from Kaido's hands. I'll carry this one. Kaido laughed. You don't have to. I know. She smiled. I want to. It was only after the words left her mouth that she realized what she had just admitted. Not to Kaido. To herself. She wanted to stay beside him. Not because she was curious anymore. Not because she was trying to understand him. Because she genuinely enjoyed being with him. Across the courtyard, Ryo had witnessed everything. He watched as Ayaka carried the box beside Kaido, laughing quietly at something he had said. His jaw tightened. In 2 years, he had never seen that smile. Not once. Very quietly, he murmured to himself, Who are you? Ransato? Far ahead. Completely unaware that someone had begun investigating him, Kaido smiled as he thanked Ayaka for helping. And as they reached the library doors, she realized something that frightened her more than any exam, meeting, or responsibility she had ever faced. For the first time in her life, she didn't want the conversation to end. 2 weeks had passed since Hana Takahashi first stepped into the lost and found office. The entire campus had noticed the change. She still excelled in every class. She still led every council meeting flawlessly. She was still the elegant, untouchable student council president. But now, there were moments when she'd quietly disappear. And somehow, those moments always ended near one small office beside the administration building. President. Ayaka closed the meeting. Agenda. That's today's final report. Ayaka nodded. Good work. The council members began leaving one by one. Only Ryo remained seated. He watched the empty chair beside Ayaka. You've been absent more often. I've attended every required meeting. That's not what I meant. Silence. Ryo finally spoke. You're spending time with Rinsato. Ayaka calmly met his eyes. Well, yes. You barely know him. I know enough. Ryo leaned forward. I know you. Ayaka didn't answer. Because, deep inside, she wasn't sure. That afternoon, Kaido finished locking the lost and found office. He looked toward the sky. Perfect weather. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh bread from the campus bakery. It feels nice. A familiar voice answered. It does. He turned. The student council girl. Ayaka smiled. For some reason, hearing him call her that no longer bothered her. Instead, it made her strangely happy. Are you busy? Not really. She hesitated. Would you walk with me? He smiled. Sure. The campus was unusually peaceful. Most students had already gone home. Golden evening light stretched across the empty paths. For several minutes, they simply walked. No pressure. No awkwardness. Just comfortable silence. Finally, Ayako asked, Can I ask you something? You just did. She rolled her eyes. A serious question. He laughed. Go ahead. Why don't you have many friends? Kaido became unusually quiet. Not uncomfortable. Just thoughtful. I do. Oh, you do? A few. But I stopped trying to make lots of them. Why? He looked ahead. Because people get tired. Tired? They think I'm ignoring them. They think I don't care. They think. He stopped himself. Then smiled. It's complicated. Ayako wanted to ask more. But she didn't. Somehow, she felt he'd answer when he was ready. As they crossed the music courtyard, a violin performance echoed from the outdoor stage. Dozens of students had gathered. Kaito stopped walking. He closed his eyes. Oh, she's nervous today. Ayako looked toward the stage. The violinist performed beautifully. She sounds perfect. Listen carefully. Ayako listened again. Just before every difficult passage, there was the faintest hesitation. Barely noticeable. Oh, I hear it. Kaito smiled. She's afraid of making one mistake. How could you tell? I listen. The same answer. Always the same. I listen. They continued walking. A professor passed. Without looking up, Kaito smiled. Good evening, Professor Nakamura. The professor laughed. I haven't even said anything. You always carry those old keys. The professor shook them gently. The familiar metallic rhythm echoed through the air. You recognize the sound. I always do. Ayaka watched the exchange carefully. Then another professor approached from the opposite direction. Kaito smiled again. Professor Suzuki. The man frowned. Professor Ito. Kaito froze. A brief silence. Then he laughed awkwardly. Sorry. Professor Ito smiled. Kindly. Well, it happens. As the professor walked away, Ayaka remained quiet. Again he had mistaken someone. Not once. Not twice. Many times. Yet he never mistook a voice. Never mistook a sound. Never mistook a habit. Pieces of a puzzle were slowly coming together. The sun had almost set. They reached the small garden behind the library. Rows of benches overlooked a quiet pond. Ayaka sat down. Kaito sat beside her. For a while neither spoke. Then Ayaka finally asked, Can I tell you something? Well, of course. Most people are afraid of me. I noticed. Doesn't that bother you? He smiled. I've never really understood. Why? You don't. You've always been nice to me. Ayaka looked down. Only to you. Maybe. He shrugged. I guess I got lucky. She laughed softly. You know. Well, I think I did. For the first time, Kaito looked slightly embarrassed. A voice interrupted them. Kaito. Professor Nakamura stood a short distance away. Could I borrow you for a moment? Sure. Kaito stood. I'll be right back. Ayaka nodded. She remained on the bench, watching the pond, listening absent-mindedly to the breeze. A few moments later, voices drifted from behind the nearby garden wall. She hadn't intended to listen, but the evening air carried every word. Professor Nakamura spoke first. You should tell her. Silence. Then Kaito answered quietly. You know why? Because she'll start treating me differently. A pause. Professor Nakamura sighed. Not everyone does. They always mean well. Kaito's voice remained gentle. They introduce themselves again. They apologize every time. They become careful. They stop acting naturally. Another pause. And after a while, they don't know how to talk to me anymore. The words were followed by silence. Then the quietest sentence Ayaka had ever heard him speak. I miss the way people act before they know. Ayaka's chest tightened. She still didn't know what they were talking about. But for the first time, she realized something. Kaito wasn't hiding a secret because he was ashamed. He was hiding it because he was afraid of losing something precious. Normal conversations, natural smiles, ordinary friendships. Footsteps approached. Ayako quickly looked back toward the pond. A moment later, Kaito returned. Sorry, Professor needed something. She looked at him. He was smiling again. The same warm smile. The same easy laugh. Yet now, she could see something she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't that he never felt lonely. It was that he had become incredibly good at hiding it. They slowly walked toward the campus gate. Just before reaching the entrance, Kaito stopped. Can I ask you something? This time? She smiled. Go ahead. Why do you keep coming to Lost and Found? The question caught her completely off guard. She looked away, searching for an answer. Finally, she smiled honestly. At first, because I was curious. He nodded. I figured. But now. She hesitated. You know. She looked directly at him. Because I enjoy spending time with you. Silence. Kaito smiled. I'm glad. Nothing more. No grand confession. No dramatic music. Just two honest people, standing beneath the evening sky. As they parted ways, Ayako watched him disappear into the distance. This time, she wasn't thinking about his smile, or his kindness, or the strange mistakes he kept making. She was thinking about one sentence. I miss the way people act before they know. She didn't know what secret Kaito was carrying, but she made a silent promise to herself. Whatever it was, she wouldn't let it change the way she looked at him, little unaware that promise would soon be tested in front of the entire university. The annual cultural festival arrived. Beneath a sky so clear, it seemed the entire university had decided to celebrate. Music echoed from every corner of campus. Food stalls lined the walkways. Student clubs competed for attention. Families, graduates, and visiting professors filled the grounds. It was the busiest day of the year, which made it the perfect day for rumors to become public. Kaito adjusted the volunteer armband around his sleeve. Lost and Found had been temporarily moved beside the main stage. Within an hour, he had already reunited a little boy with his backpack, returned 3 phones, and somehow found the owner of a single glove. You really enjoy this, don't you? Professor Nakamura smiled. Kaito looked around at the crowded festival. Someone has to make sure people leave with what they came for. The professor laughed. You really believe that? I do. Across campus, Ayaka stood on the festival stage, delivering the opening speech. Confident, elegant, perfect. The audience applauded. She bowed politely. Yet, while everyone watched the student council president, her eyes quietly searched the crowd. She found him almost immediately. He was helping an elderly visitor carry 2 heavy boxes. A smile unconsciously appeared. Emmy noticed. Of course he did. She's looking at him again. One council member whispered. Another nodded. I don't think she's hiding it anymore. Standing nearby, Ron heard every word. His expression remained calm. But inside, he had already made a decision. An hour later, the festival reached its busiest moment. Hundreds of students crowded the central plaza. Kaito finished returning another lost wallet. As he turned, someone blocked his path. Ryo Tanaka. I don't like a word. Kaito smiled politely. And sure. Ren looked toward the crowd, gathering around them. Somewhere everyone can hear. Kaito frowned. And why? Because misunderstandings should be cleared up publicly. Students nearby immediately slowed their steps. Whispers spread. On Ryo. What's happening? Is this about the president? Within moments, dozens of people surrounded them. Ron spoke calmly. You've become very close to President Takahashi. I guess we've become friends. You guess? Kaito nodded. I haven't really thought about it. Ren's expression tightened. You don't understand what your actions look like. I'm sorry. You constantly pretend not to recognize her. Silence. You treat her like she's ordinary. Another silence. You ignore her status. You embarrass her. And somehow, she still keeps coming back. The crowd murmured. Some students nodded. Others watched Kaito carefully. Ren took one more step. So, tell everyone. Is this some kind of game? Kaito stared at him. A game? Or do you simply enjoy making the president chase after you? The entire plaza fell silent. For several long seconds, Kaito said nothing. Not because he didn't have an answer. Because he had promised himself he would never explain. Not unless he absolutely had to. Ren mistook his silence for guilt. I thought so. Then, a calm voice cut through the crowd. Enough. The students parted almost instantly. Ayaka walked forward, still wearing her festival sash, still perfectly composed. She stopped beside Kaido. I asked him to spend time with me. Ren looked at her. President. I looked for him. Another wave of whispers. I invited him. More whispers. I chose him. The plaza became completely silent. Ren couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then why? Ayaka answered honestly. Because he treated me like a normal person. Ren looked toward Kaido. He treated you that way because he didn't care who you were. For the first time, Kaido spoke. That's not true. Every eye turned toward him. I cared. His voice became quieter. I didn't know. Ren frowned. And what? Kaido took a slow breath. Then smiled sadly. I have face blindness. The words hung in the air. Nobody spoke. I can see perfectly. I read. I drive. I recognize places. But, when I look at someone's face, my brain doesn't reliably tell me who they are. The crowd stared in stunned silence. Kaito continued quietly. So, I learned to recognize people differently. Voices, footsteps, the way they laugh, the things they carry, the perfume they wear, the habits nobody else notices. He looked toward Ayaka. I recognized your silver bell before I recognized anything else. Ayaka instinctively touched the tiny bell hanging from her bag. You always straighten your sleeve when you're thinking. You pause for half a second before answering difficult questions. You never finish your coffee. And when you're pretending you're not tired, your voice becomes softer. Ayaka's eyes slowly widened. He knew. He had always known. Just not her face. Kaido looked down. I never ignored you. I simply couldn't recognize you the way everyone else could. The silence became almost unbearable. A first-year student quietly whispered. That's why he never reacted when people called her the Ice Queen. Another remembered. He thought she was just the student council girl. Everything suddenly made sense. The notebook, the umbrella, the coffee, the lunch, every strange moment, every misunderstanding. They all fit together. Ren slowly lowered his head. For the first time, he realized he had been fighting someone who had never even understood the battlefield. When Ayaka he stopped. There was nothing left to accuse him of. Ayaka stepped forward. One step, then another, until she stood directly in front of Kaido. Her eyes shimmered. You idiot. Kaido blinked. And what? You carried that all by yourself. Before he could answer, she gently took his hand. In front of the entire university. If anyone laughs at him. She looked around the silent plaza. Oh, they laugh at me. If anyone thinks he's pretending, they're calling me a liar. She tightened her grip. And if anyone believes he ever disrespected me. Her voice trembled for the first time. Then they never understood me either. No one spoke. No one dared. Because the campus Ice Queen was openly protecting someone, not because she had to, because she wanted to. Kaito looked down at their joined hands. Everyone's watching. Ayaka remembered the words from the cold opening. Only this time. She smiled through the tears gathering in her eyes. I don't care anymore. The crowd watched in complete silence. Not because they had witnessed a scandal, but because they had witnessed the truth. The boy everyone thought had ignored the campus Ice Queen had been seeing her more clearly than anyone else all along. End of scene 5. Epilogue. I never needed your face. 1 week later, the rumors had disappeared. Not because people lost interest, because they finally understood. The campus Ice Queen no longer walked through campus alone. Sometimes, she walked beside Kaito. Sometimes they drank coffee. Sometimes they sat together in comfortable silence. People still stared. Neither of them cared. One afternoon, they passed the old Lost and Found office. Kaito stopped beside the familiar shelves. You know. Ayaka looked at him. And what? He smiled. I was wrong. About what? He glanced toward the old umbrella that had never been claimed. I said the saddest thing was when nobody came back. She waited. He looked at her. It turns out sometimes the best things in life find you first. Ayaka laughed. A real laugh. Bright. Unrestrained. The kind that once would have shocked an entire university. Now, it simply made Kaito smile. She gently intertwined her fingers with his. Do you know something? What? You've never really seen my face. He nodded. You know. She stepped a little closer. Does that bother you? Kaito smiled. You know. Why? He looked at the tiny silver bell hanging from her bag. Then listened. The soft chime. Her breathing. The familiar rhythm of her footsteps as she shifted closer. Finally, he looked into her eyes. I never needed your face to recognize the person I fell in love with. For a moment, the world around them disappeared. The campus ice queen closed the final distance between them. Their foreheads touched. A quiet promise. No audience. No rumors. No titles. Just two ordinary university students who had finally found someone worth coming back for. And somewhere inside the lost and found office, an old umbrella still waited on its shelf. A reminder that sometimes the things we fear are lost forever are simply waiting for the right person to find them. Sometimes the people who understand us the most aren't the ones who notice our appearance, they're the ones who notice our heart. In a world obsessed with status, beauty, and first impressions, it's easy to believe that our value comes from what others see on the outside. But the strongest relationships are built by people who choose to understand our habits, our kindness, our struggles, and the little things that make us who we truly are. Kaito couldn't recognize Ayaka's face, yet he recognized her loneliness. Ayaka spent years believing everyone admired her, until she met the one person who simply saw her as another human being. Maybe that's what real love has always been. Not finding someone with a perfect face, but finding someone who never stops choosing you even after discovering your imperfections. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to tell us what matters more to you: being admired by everyone or being truly understood by one person? Share your answer in the comments. We'd love to read your thoughts. And if you enjoy heartfelt romance stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next journey together. Thank you for spending your time with us. Well, see you in the next story.